You see, my journey on how to make a difference was when I was in my 20s and my assistant, I was a pastor, I started off pastoring. She gave me a Christmas present, I opened it up, and the title, it was a book, and the title of the book was The Greatest Story Ever Told. Now, I loved to read, and I thought, oh my gosh, what a title, The Greatest Story Ever Told. I, with great anticipation, opened up the book, and when I opened up the book, much to my surprise, all the pages were blank. And I looked at her, I said, well, it says The Greatest Story Ever Told. She said, turn to the first page. I turned to the first page, and she had written a note for me. Dear John, your life is before you. You fill these pages with your dreams, with your hopes, with matters of your heart. You write your story and make it the greatest story ever told. I took that book home with me. And the next morning, I wasn't a writer at that time at all. Next morning, I started writing my first book, and this was for me. And the first words on that blank page, the first words I put on that blank page was, I want to make a difference. Because that's exactly what I want to do. I want to make a difference. So as you start to take this Make a Difference journey in our series that we've been doing on vision, and this is the last of the 4, as you start your Make a Difference journey, the first step 1 is, I want to make a difference. It begins there. It's already in your heart. It was sown in your heart when you were created. I can still remember being in the 4th grade and walking across the campus at a camp meeting. My father was an overseer for about 250 pastors, and he was so greatly loved, and he made such a difference in so many leaders' life. And I would hold his hand, and in the 4th grade, I kind of wanted to go to lunch, and it's only a 3-minute walk across the campus, but for my dad, it was a 30-minute walk. Because he'd stop and pray with people and encourage people and believe in people and love on people. And I would watch people come and just, I could tell how much they adored him and loved him. And I'm in the 4th grade, and I'm saying, when I get older, I want to be just like my dad. I just want to make a difference. I want to add value to people. I just want to make a difference. And when you think about it, when you're making a difference, your spirit is high, your morale is high. You all of a sudden you feel good about yourself and you feel good about others. I wish you could meet my dad. He's still alive. He's 96 and he'll be 97 in November. And he's an incredible man. When my mother died, I'm the middle child, 3 of us children. We went to him and asked him to go to an assisted care place. He was still dry. He was in great shape, but we just wanted to be close to medical help, and they were building one very close to his home, and so he said yes, and so he would go over and visit him while they were building it, and he'll say, well, I'm going to be here, and I'm going to be here, and he'd go over and visit. Everybody knew him, and so one day we're having lunch. He said, Dad, John, he said, when they move us in, I'm going to be the first one to move in. I said, that's nice. I said, why do you want to be the first one? He said, well, son, think about it for a moment. There's going to be a bunch of old people there. Never entered his mind that he was old. He said, there's going to be a bunch of old people there. And he said, I want to be the first one moved in. So when they come and they're kind of fearful and anxious about this new place they're going to, I can meet them at the front door and shake their hand and say, my name is Melvin Maxwell, and I'm going to be your neighbor, and it's going to be okay. I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to make a difference at that front door. And he did. And then, after he's in a few months, I'm talking to him again. He says, I'm the chaplain now here. I said, that's good. I said, that's good, Dad. I said, how'd you become chaplain? He said, well, there wasn't any. He said, I looked around, there wasn't any chaplain. And so he said, I just raised my hand and made myself chaplain. And he said, I'm the chaplain now. And so here's the chaplain. I'm back up, I'm seeing him all. And he started it. They talked to him into letting him start a little church. And they gave him a room there in the assisted care. And he filled the first service up. And so he had a second service, filled that one up. And then he had a night service and filled that up. And I'm having lunch again with him another time. And he said, son, we're packed out. He said, we're packed out. He said, I don't know what we're going to do. We're packed out. He said, I'm looking into satellite right now. I'm looking at satellite. He's 93 and he's looking into satellite. Come on. He's 93. Another time he told me this, I love this. He said, I named my church. So, I'm with my dad. I'm always fastening my seatbelt. I said, oh, that's good, Dad. I said, well, what do you name the church? Well, he said, first of all, son, let me give you the context. He said, they're all old. They're old. He said, they're just old people, son. Do you realize how old those people are? They're old. And he said, they come to my church. He said, that, they're near death. He said, I call my church the first church of the last chance. Isn't that good? First church, last chance. Hey, you better get in now. You're going soon, baby. Woo, you're on a fast slide down there. Let's go. Always encouraging people. I asked him one time, I said, Dad, how do you know people need to be encouraged? Oh, he said, son, that's simple. If they're breathing. He said, if you're breathing, you need to be encouraged. He said, that's why I encourage everyone. Son, if they're breathing, they need to be encouraged. He said, now, let me tell you this. Let me give you a hint. If they're not breathing, don't waste your time. You don't need to encourage them. If they're dead, don't. But if they're living, I want to make a difference. I saw him the other day. In the last year and a half, he worked full time as a chaplain until about a year and a half ago, and he fell and he broke 6 ribs, and then he had a stroke. And so he's in a wheelchair, and over the last year, I've been walking with him, and he'd be in the wheelchair, and he'd call me close to him, and for a while, his stroke had really affected his speech. And he'd call me, get me real close, and he'd get real close, and he'd whisper in my ear, he'd say, son, I'm coming back. I'm coming back. He's 96, I'm coming back. I said, Dad, you got a 96-year-old body and a 26-year-old will. I'm coming back. In the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks, he's now out of the wheelchair, back at the walker. And he's, so we're out to lunch the other day, or dinner, and he said, all I really want to eat is ice cream. And so I got him a big thing of ice cream. That big. When you're 96, you can eat anything you want to. Don't let anybody put that stuff on you. Hello. You don't have to do that bird seed anymore. And so he got this big thing of ice cream, and we're just talking. He's just having the time of his life. And he looks at me, he said, son, I've been praying. And God has shown me. Now listen, the greatest opportunities are still before me to help people. He's 96. The greatest opportunities are still before me to help people. I want to make a difference. Step 2, doing something that makes a difference. You take that passion of wanting to make a difference, and then you say, okay, what can I do? What can I do that will really make a difference? And you take that passion and you match it up with your giftedness, your spiritual gift. What is your giftedness that God has given you? Because you see, to find your purpose, your passion will take you there almost all the way, but your strengths, your giftedness, your abilities, it'll take you there all the way, because God created you with your gifts to fulfill that purpose. This is a beautiful thing. And that's what's so beautiful about small groups, because so many times in small groups, that's where you find your gifts, and that's where you find your giftedness, and people begin to talk to you about things that you do that are effective and good. I want to make a difference doing something that makes a difference. But point 3, with people who want to make a difference. You see, one is too small of a number to achieve greatness. I wrote a book called The Laws of Teamwork. And one of the laws of teamwork is the law of Mount Everest. And the law of Mount Everest says, as the challenge escalates, the need for teamwork elevates. In other words, if you're going to climb Mount Everest, you don't do it alone. If I told you I'm leaving here, and I forget the president in Kenya. I'm leaving here, I'm going to go over to Nepal, and I got my shorts and I got my sneakers, and I thought I'd spend the first couple days next week. I think I want to just run up the top of Mount Everest and plant a flag. Well, you look at each other and say, the man's an idiot. You don't run to the top of Mount Everest. And you don't do it alone. Nobody's ever gone up to the top of the mountain. You see, it's too big of a deal. It's too big of a mountain. It's too hard. You can't get it up there without the help of someone else. You see, now if you want to climb a Texas hill, first you got to find one. You can climb a Texas hill by yourself. Are you with me, huh? You can do a Texas hill, but you can't do Mount Everest. So I love it when people come to me and say, well, I'm a self-made man. And I always look at them and say, oh, I'm so sorry. That's too bad. I say, what do you mean? Well, it's too bad you're self-made, because if you've made everything yourself, you ain't made much. No. One's too small of a number. One's too small of a number to achieve greatness. You see, you do it together. That's what's the value of coming together to church and covenant. That's the value of small groups. You get in your were you not blessed with that video of that group, and they're going out there and here's somebody was homeless, and now their small group, they're going to take food to the homeless. And by the way, when they go out and do that in Dallas, they're not only going to take food to the homeless, they're going to encounter Jesus. Oh my. Jesus said, hey, if you feed people, you feed me. Are you with me? If you visit people in prison, you visit me. Come on. If you clothe people, you clothe me. I run to people all the time and I say, well, I'm just trying to get close to Jesus and he seems far away. Well, of course he's far away to you. You ain't doing what you're supposed to do. Go out and start meeting people, loving people, ministering to people, caring for people, sharing people. And the moment that you start doing that, you meet Jesus, because he said, every time you do that, you meet me. So every time I give somebody a hug, I'm hugging Jesus. And you're not close to him, you need to get a life. I want to make a difference, doing something that makes a difference with people. Now, there's got to be the right kind of people, with people who want to make a difference. You got to be careful, because there's a bunch of people, they're not doing anything. You understand that? They're not the ones you hang around with. You want to hang around with people who want to make a difference. In the beginning, I just thought I would do it with people, so I tried to get people together, and some of the people I got together, they didn't want to do anything. Have you ever met anybody like that? It's awful hard to hit the ball and drag Charlie, hit the ball and drag Charlie, hit the ball and drag Charlie, hit the ball and drag Charlie. After a while, don't you just want to hit Charlie? What am I saying? I want to make a difference with people who want to make a difference. If one will put 1,000 to flight, 2 puts 10,000 to flight. Talk to me. 2 will put 10,000. Listen to me, folks. That's called Jesus math. It's a higher math than what you and I were taught in school. I want to make a difference. Doing something that makes a difference with people who want to make a difference. Number 4. Before I give you number 4, are you learning something? Okay, just checking. Learned a long time ago, don't teach people who don't want to learn. It's too close to lunch. By the way, whenever you're listening to a speaker and it's about this time and you think they're going to go on and on and on, and you're a little worried and you're getting a little hungry, and you're thinking, does he realize what time it is? Will he stop? Do you think we'll get lunch? I'm going to help you out. My name's John. I'm your friend. Look at the speaker. If he's fat like me, you'll break for lunch. Absolutely. If he's skinny, you're in trouble. Pray, just pray. You're in real trouble. I want to make a difference with people, doing something. Now, at a time. Number 4, at a time when it makes a difference. Wow. And the time is now. Make every day your masterpiece. The secret of your success, the secret of my success is determined by what we do daily. And we've missed this all the time. I wrote a book called Today Matters. And the reason I wrote the book Today Matters is because today matters. We over-exaggerate yesterday. We just think we were amazing yesterday. We weren't. Just trust me. Of course, when you're my age, 71, you don't need to worry about it. You forget. The other day I was in a car and Margaret looked at me and said, John, we're forgetting everything. I said, we kind of are, aren't we? She said, let's do a plan. I said, what's your plan? She said, you remember who we are, and I'll remember where we're going. Hey, it's working. It's really working. You got to divide it up a little bit. You got to divide it up. We over-exaggerate yesterday. Hey, we overestimate tomorrow. Oh yeah. Oh, tomorrow. I'll get to that tomorrow. Oh yeah. I'll do that. Oh yeah. Tomorrow. By the way, good intentions are worthless. Worthless, folks. When are you going to fall out of love with good intentions? They're worthless. Good intentions are worthless unless they lead to good actions. Nobody ever had their life changed by somebody hoping, thinking. Good intentions are not enough.
I'm reminded, Chris, of Albert Einstein's quote that says, strive not to be a success, but rather to be of value. Sounds like John Maxwell
100%
lives that life. And so today, we kind of always do this standout statement, something that'll really drive the point, the desired outcome of the podcast. And today, it's really about give others your best self. I have committed my life to helping others reach their full potential. And this whole concept that before I can do that, I've got to be effective. I've got to be of value to the team. I've got to show that I really do want job security. And so we're picking that back up today, and it's good to be back with you.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me back. I love this, and I often think about, this is my favorite content piece of John's, but I think a lot about John's 5 levels of influence, the 5 levels of leadership, and how you move in between these different levels, and you're continually growing. And as I think about that and the points that John has brought to us, not only in today's lesson as we go through kind of 6 through 10, but what we talked about last episode. And by the way, I know Mark mentioned it in the opening, but if you haven't listened to that, you want to go listen to that, because Mark shares a story at the end of that lesson that not many people know about, one of the things to where he was prepared and he was on a plane ride with several other leaders. And so you want to go listen to that, because I promise you it will resonate. We're gonna start right here where John talks about show that you add value. And as I think about this a little bit, I love where he started off in that quote that he put in the notes for us, where it says the verb of your job is everything. The verb, not your title, not your business card. And as I thought more about this is what kind of led me to the 5 levels of influence. This is really about increasing your influence inside the organization. And when you do that, you have job security. Yeah. We've often kicked around the idea of, what if all of us were on a 1-year contract? I had, where this comes from is, I had a gentleman one time in a small group, part of my church, and he said, what if your wife every year made the decision whether or not she wanted to re-up or not for another year? Like that was our tradition, our custom. I was like, well, I wouldn't be sitting here being married for 25 plus years, right? It wouldn't have worked. But man, what if we had that mindset of our influence, of our production, of our adding value, that we would part ways? You think about athletes. You and I talk a lot about Sports Illustrated. What happens in contract year? They kill it.
They play so much better.
So are we, in thinking about job security, really going after that? And I know that you've seen that. I know that you take that approach in what we're doing. But talk a little bit about John's point there and what resonates with you most as a leader.
Well, I wrote down 2 questions. I will challenge our podcast family with these 2 questions. And it's this. It's very directed to you. What are you producing for the organization? What are you producing? When is the last time you've produced? What are you producing? And then the second question is another verb. What are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing today to make yourself invaluable? When I was listening to John teach this today, Chris, I thought, show that you add value. And I've been around the people that talk about themselves too much, right? I mean, let me tell you what I just did. Let me tell you what I've done. I've also been around people that never demonstrate or never point out that they get that they're adding value. In other words, they're the silent person over on the right, and their actions speak more than words. I get all of that. But I think there's sometimes leaders that we've got to get over our sense of humility, and we got to point out that we understand what value is and that we see times that we add value. In other words, show that we add value. Let me tell you how I've added value. Now, John's very good at this, and a lot of times people go, man, he talks about himself a lot. It's never to get the self gratification or self-appreciation or to put the limelight on himself that drives John to do that. We do that as leaders not to get credit. We do that to model expectation. And I have found that sometimes as a leader, the temptation to just do it and not let anybody notice it, and I'm speaking directly to you because this is truly you, we do it and we don't do it for credit. We do because it's the right thing. But by not establishing credit, we don't get it modeled in our team. We always go, why can't my team do what I'm doing? It's because they may not be observant to what you're doing. So I've had to sometimes go, hey, team, let me tell you this. I have taken on this sacrifice. Now, I didn't tell them that for them to feel sorry for me. In fact, sometimes I can remember doing that, and the sacrifice was not that great. It was kind of laughable that I had to mention it. The only reason I mention that and bring credit or praise to myself when I show people that I am adding value is so that it will be modeled. So my real challenge to you in this whole comment, Chris, to you, because you need to hear this, and to others, is never share or show that you're adding value for self-glorification or self-edification. But don't be afraid to do it if the model needs to be given so that it's demonstrated throughout the team.
Yeah, I love what you're talking about there, and there's no doubt that the key word for us to remember in this, and this is where John, you and I have known him for a long time, so I know where this stands with him. But as you think about this, Mark is not talking about the boasting side of things. It's all about our motive, right? And we've said before, there's a fine line, between influence and then manipulation. One is self-serving, the other one's focused on others, and that the difference is the motive. So remember, yes, you want job security. That's what we're trying to help you with here with John's lesson and unpack this and apply it a little bit for you. But man, have the right motive behind why you're doing what Mark's doing. That's in essence what he's talking to us about doing. Well, let's jump to this next point that John talks about here, and where it reminded me of a conversation that either you've had with me or John, where you come in and someone turns in their resignation, and you have one of two feelings. You go, all right, it's time to move on. That made it a little bit easier on me as a leader. Let's just be honest. Not everybody likes to have those conversations. The other one is, oh God, like you're sick to your stomach, where they are almost irreplaceable inside their organization. And John goes down and he gives us, kind of two questions here. Can they or will they? And I want you to unpack the importance of these two questions, because I think they cannot stand alone, right? You can have ability, but if you don't have the right attitude, the culture is going to weed you out. And then vice versa. And I know that you've seen this throughout your leadership. Why are these two questions so important to you as a leader inside the culture of your organization?
Yeah, I think, again, we're talking about this idea of irreplaceable when John's teaching this. Can they or will they? By the way, if you heard last week's podcast, episode 1, part 1 of this 2-part series, Chris was concerned that we selected this lesson because we had something to tell him, that he was replaceable.
It's intervention.
And I was going to, you said intervention, and I was going to bring out the pink slip and let you go. When you're sitting there just then talking about, should I stay or should I go? I'm sitting there going, is he getting ready to resign right here on the podcast? So touche.
Okay, there you go.
Touche.
Got you back.
Okay. No, seriously. I think what we're really doing here is trying to demonstrate irreplaceable. How do I make myself irreplaceable? As a leader, when I'm interviewing somebody, I have to answer the question, can they, ability, will they, do they have the attitude that I want? But now we're talking about somebody on the team. They've been there, done that. They have charged the mountain. They've accomplished the summit. They've done some stuff for us. How do you stay irreplaceable?
That's good.
Because often what people do is say, yes, I can, look. Yes, I will, look. I did it. I did it. That's not here. If your attitude is not daily and consistently, I can and I will, not I did and I won't do it again, or I did and don't ask me that again. I did it once. You have made yourself replaceable for the organization because this attitude is not about can they, have they done it before? It's can they do it today and in the future for the organization.
Good.
The question is not will they based on have they done it before? Is there a demonstrable passion that they have brought to the table? The question is the passion still there? Because I have found that a lot of times when leaders have accomplished something great, they begin to coast. When leaders have demonstrated great sacrifice, they begin to hoard. It's what Bill Gates said, that tomorrow's success is often jeopardized with today's success. In other words, good today stops us from great tomorrow because we settle in for that. Well, these great leaders that have accomplished great things, they lose their will they. They lose their can they based on yesterday's payday. And what we don't want to do, podcast listeners, what we don't want to do, leaders, is not answer the question with a historical reference, but with a passion and a hope for the future reference. I can again, I will again. And often we find ourselves looking too much at the past resume of someone rather than the current passion and desire of someone when we look at their replaceability or not.
I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about this image as you're talking of driving a car. And we talk about rear view mirror versus looking out the front windshield. And I'm like, yeah, when I'm in the rear view mirror, I'm thinking about who's in the back seat, what's behind me, what all this stuff versus to your point. And I love this illustration. And leaders, if you're out there, man, the more you can be looking out that front windshield and thinking about what is it that I can help do the organization? How can I help my leader? What's next? What can we be doing differently? That will make you irreplaceable.
I wish I had this, and I should stop the podcast right now and go research it. I read a report one day that of all the wrecks that happen from somebody rear-ending somebody, over some big percentage, 65% or 70%, is they are looking in the rearview mirror and do not see the traffic stopped. Now, if that's true, and I got to go find this now because I'm all fired up, but it's fascinating that most of the wrecks that happen with rear-ending somebody is not that they stopped too fast, not even just that you were following too close, it's you momentarily took your eyes off of where you're going to look at where you have been and you crash. It's true in leadership. It's true in being replaceable or irreplaceable in a company. Too often we want yesterday's success to open the door of opportunity for tomorrow, and I don't believe that's true. I believe today's tenacity, hope, and energy is what opens the door for tomorrow, not what happened yesterday.
Yeah, that's awesome. We need to look that
we
study
do.
up. We're going to do a leadership lesson on that in the future. Listen, if you follow along, and we want to thank you again for those that are a part of this podcast world. Because of you, we're able to have impact on people around the world. It's where we get our comments, our contents, and we're grateful. You're probably used to everything that we talk about is in our show notes. Well, we got a little surprise for you.
Yeah.
If you have not downloaded the show notes, you need to go download them because Jake, our producer of our podcast, got a little surprise in there for you. John lists out 10 things that he finds in irreplaceable people. We're not going to share them with you today. John didn't share them with you on the audio. You got to go download the show notes.
I love that.
And you'll see those 10 things in there.
We're looking every day now on Minute with Maxwell at the 16 laws of communication. This is law number 10, the law of simplicity, which basically says communicators take something complicated and make it simple. I often tell people, although I have an education, I'm a communicator, not an educator. What do I mean by that? Educators take something simple, make it complicated. They just do. If you can understand it, they're not too happy about it. And communicators take something complicated and make it simple. And when I teach, I try to do what I say. When I use the phrase, I try to put the cookies on the lower shelf so that everybody can reach them, everybody can touch them, and everybody can obviously eat them. So in the law of simplicity, I basically talk about keep your lesson, keep your message simple. I say things like, get to the point before people start asking, what's the point? Wow. I talk about repetition. Say it again and again and again and again. I talk about the fact that if you can't explain it simply, you probably don't understand it. I was being interviewed, and the person that was interviewing me, I was talking about one of my new books that had been released, and I kind of had the feeling that he really didn't care for me too much. But one of the things he said in the interview was, he said, John, he said, I've read your books, and they're very simple. And I said, well, yeah, they are. And he said, why are your books so simple? I said, well, I just want people to understand them and apply them to their life. And as he kept pressing me on simplicity, I finally said, well, my books are simple as far as to understand, but it takes effort and energy and action to apply those laws. And that's exactly what happens. When I get up to speak, I ask myself two questions. What do I want the people to know? What do I want the people to do? Those two questions. What I want them to know is all about simplicity in explaining and teaching things. What do I want them to do? I want them to know and understand the content in such a way that they can go out and they can apply it to their life. Less is more. That's the law of simplicity.
Well, today's topic is titled An Intentional Leader's Guide to Influence. And if you want to become someone who can positively influence other people, you really need to develop qualities around that, qualities of integrity, and then live them out every day. And make sure, the way that you are leading, the way that you are talking is how you're living that out. And the key here is those don't happen by accident. They're learned. You may have an intrinsic, maybe some core to some of those competences or qualities, but you really got to live them out. You got to develop them. And in order to do that, it takes intentionality. And so, Perry, just talk to us a little bit about the title today and where we're going on this content.
Yeah, so we have a piece of content based on a book that John wrote some years ago called Developing the Leader Within You. And of course, we believe leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So you're really developing the influence that you have with others. I was doing on a group call around this topic of developing the leader within you, and noticed that the idea of what is influence, how do you gain it, how do people see you as a person of influence? How does that happen? And it really is this word intentional. There are intentional things we need to do. We have a couple other podcasts where we've talked about some practical ways to build influence. I really like this lesson on looking at some really the mindset. I love John's title, the leader within you. Is that how do you develop these attributes in you?
Love it. Well, when John teaches the intentionality of influence, he shares a handful of ideas that can make your intentional efforts pay off. And so Perry and I are just going to kind of bounce back and forth with a couple of these ideas and share them with you as we get started. The first one is model consistency of character. I think when you do this, it builds trust, which we talk about, trust being the currency to all influence and leadership. I think you create a stable environment as a leader. And you may say, well, how do I go about doing this? Which is a fair question. But I think as leaders then, if you have, clear values and principles, reliable decision-making, I can think back to some leaders that I've had where their decision-making was not reliable. Not saying it's here, but previously that has been the case. I think if you have emotional stability, we talk about EQ a lot as leaders. And just remember that as we talk about this consistency of character, consistency doesn't necessarily mean that it's just rigid. It's really about having stability, reliability, and trustworthiness that allows you to be able to do that.
I love that. No key word consistency of character. We work with a lot of leaders, and I don't know that I have one that I think is trying not to uphold the highest character.
Right.
We tend to, if you're
That's
in
good.
leadership, you are tending to, you're not trying to deceive or hurt. You're trying to uphold the highest of character. What I have noticed, though, when it comes to consistency, and this is true, this was true for me for a number of years, was, are you the same person? Are you the same character in every situation you're in? At home, at work, on the golf course, at the gym, in the workplace, at the church, in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Are you the same person? And I know, just speaking from my past, it was I can be 2 different people, 3 different people, depending on who I'm with. That is not consistency of character.
Yeah.
And so one of the big learnings I had to make was determine who you are, what is the character you want to live to, and then be that. And don't apologize for it. Don't protect this group from it and not that group. Are you consistent in how you walk things out? And is your talk consistent in every constituency that you're hanging with today?
We do this values card exercise, and you just made me think about 8 out of 10 times they're like, now are we doing this for the values here at work or at home?
Yeah.
And we're like, it shouldn't
You
be.
have different values?
You have different values. And so it just made me think about that. And so getting into the place where you're consistent no matter where you are, I think is key.
And number 2 is another one you think, well, yeah, but I want to hear what you think about this, though. It says, employ honest communication. Employ honest communication. I thought, well, I don't know a lot of people that are trying to be dishonest about their communication, but this is not what we're talking about here. You think about a person of influence. Has that consistency of character. They speak in a way that is very clear. That is, we talk about clear as kind. They don't shield you from stuff. They don't protect you. They don't give you just what you need to know. They don't hold back. They are very honest, open, and consistent again in their communication. And you can generally tell that when they're talking, you're getting the straight scoop.
Yeah.
There's nothing you have to read between the lines. You don't have to figure out what do they mean, no innuendo, those types of things. It is developing an honesty of my communication, direct.
I think different levels of leadership, at times as leaders, you will have communication that you can't share at the moment. However, if that's the case, be honest about that, right? Like to your point, they can sense that. You and I can sense it. Everybody that's listening can sense it when someone's communicating to them and they're like, I don't think I'm getting the whole story. Like there's something behind there. And so I love that as being the next one that you brought up. Well, the third one is value transparency. Speaking of communication, feeding right off what you just talked about, man, be open and honest with your communication. Encourage feedback both ways. Be transparent with what you're thinking. Allow your team and those that you influence to do the same thing. Address mistakes and failures. I put this one down there because everybody knows when you make a mistake and there's failures. It's okay to be transparent about it and encourage that in your team and lead by example by doing that. In order for you to really kind of get to this valuing transparency, it is an ongoing effort that requires commitment to be able to do it, because naturally I think we as human beings in our flesh don't necessarily want to do this, right? We want to look all buttoned up and
my best.
thinking about, maybe in the past, walking out of my house as a kid, my mom's like, now everybody put your smiles on. We don't talk about what just happened inside the house, right? And we should value transparency, not necessarily that.
I love your direction on a bit about vulnerability. Is that don't hide your mistakes and faults. That it leads to you looking perfect, and nobody really likes perfect. You're much more relatable if you're real, and you value that transparency. Often the example I give when I teach about this is that we tend to, and social media does this a lot. You're seeing the Perry front stage act, and there's a curtain drawn behind me, and all you can see is what I want you to see. The transparency of my life is I open the curtain, and you see the backstage act, which can be a little bit disastrous, chaotic, out of control sometimes. But it begins to give you a realization of my whole story. Now, this doesn't mean all my dirty laundry's out. No, but there's too much information. But I don't mind sharing with my life to say I don't have it all together. I'm learning, and you can help me, and we can help each other. So the transparency, I think, adds to connection and trust.
That's good.
Is really that for that. this one kind of leads into this next one, exemplify humility. Are you an example of humility in your work? Do people see you as humble? And I love in Tim Elmore's book, The 8 Paradoxes of Leadership, paradox number 1 fascinated me because it said, can you be confident and humble at the same time? I thought, well, I really want to be a confident leader. We all want to be confident. But if I have that and no humility, I'm arrogant. Well, what if I'm all humble and no confidence, then I'm kind of sheepishness or something. I don't know. You don't want that either. Yeah. So can I balance confidence and humility? And how do you do that? And a lot of times it's what you just said. It's about being a little more transparent, using the 3 most unused words in leadership. I don't know. Letting people know that you need them, admitting that you made a mistake, asking for help, asking for an opinion, asking for a point of view, all kinds of things that can open the door to humility.
I know we've talked about those 3 words before. I don't know. I was thinking when you just said that completely went out of my mind. And I thought, I am sorry. That's probably those. But that, like, even just thinking about where you're at with humility, and because if my wife is listening, she'd be like, "That's absolutely 3 words that Chris doesn't say enough, right?" And so I didn't even think about that.
That's
you just
really
said that came to my mind because I think that shows humility. I was also thinking about, we work with leaders all the time on the 5 levels of leadership, and we talk about, you build your way up the levels, you never leave the level behind, but the other person gets to determine what level of influence you have with them. And so sometimes when we're talking about this with teams, to make an example, I'll walk up and I'll be like, you don't go up to a new team member that you have level 1 influence with and go, "Hi, my name's Chris Godey. Welcome to the team. I'm a level 5 leader. We're going to kill it," right? Like they go, "This dude's an idiot and I'm out of here." Right. And there's no humility in that in regards to your influence. And
you really have grown in that too, by the way.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's taken 27 years. No, just kidding. Well, the next one that I want to bring to your attention here is demonstrate your support for others. I think when you do this as a leader, you foster a positive, a productive environment in the team. And in that individual, it helps empower them. How do you go about doing this? Man, you've got to be an active listener. We hear this a lot as well. I think communication is always a competency we hear about when we're working with teams, but we also hear that, man, he or she just doesn't listen. And I think if we can really become good active listeners, I think we'll have support for other people. I think the other thing around this is I try to view my leadership or my influence as removing obstacles and barriers for people in order to support what they're there to do, what they're called to do, what they're gifted to do. And I think when you do that, then it demonstrates that you're supporting others on that team, and it will be it'll help your influence with them.
Yeah, key word for me there is others, and you just gave a great example. You are good at this, removing obstacles, barriers, clearing the way for the team to be effective, and that is an others-oriented mindset. And this demonstrating support for others, not trying to get others to demonstrate their support for you. Yeah. And so I want to move away from a self-centered mindset to an others orientation. And when leaders have an others orientation, people know it. Then when we talk about, do you the people on your team know you're for them, or are you looking for something from them? And I thought, if I'm demonstrating support for you, I have my antennae up looking to say, what do you need? What's in the way? What are the barriers? This is what you're so great at, saying, who do I need? I think you helped me yesterday. I had a question, wasn't trying to give you an assignment, but you said, no, I can get that real quick. And I said, no, I got it. This should be not an obstacle. This should be out of the way for everybody. So let me do that. That's an others-oriented mentality, and it really demonstrated your support for me, and you do that really well. Another one was about, seems simple, fulfill your promises. But and I'm going to tell you what I've learned about this recently was it's generally not the big, hairy, audacious promise that you say, I'm going to, like you just did yesterday, let me get that out of your way for you. It would have been easy for you to, I'll do that later. It's so simple, so easy. But you didn't. You took care of it right in the moment, and you fulfilled your promise. What I've learned about me is that one way I can break trust with others and lose influence is I'm on a call. Somebody says, man, I love that chart. Could you send me that chart? Of course, it's a no-brainer. Let me just, and I just say no-brainer. Yeah, glad to. And then a call ends, and then what I do, I go to the next call or move on to the next thing, and I don't do it. And while to me it's a tiny little a chart. It's a chart. To them, it was a promise made that they are tracking viciously to say, Perry never sent me that.
Yeah.
I have to ask 3 times every time I want something from Perry. I said, you know what? I'm changing. Got a little multicolored pen I see you're using. It was, if I make a commitment, I make a promise in a call, in a face-to-face, in a conference room, I change colors of my pen and I write in my notes.
That's great.
In red, I just made a commitment. So I write that in. So at the end of the day or at the lunch break or whatever I do, I look at anything in red.
That's really good.
I need to fulfill that because that is looking like a promise to other people. And it seems so small to me, I just overlooked it. But it's not small to them. And if you want to continue to have influence and trust, do the small things really well.
Yeah, I love that you developed a system and a process to help yourself with that, because we all get busy and we do make promises and then just accidentally it just falls through the crack and we forget about it. So I love that you have a system that you have set up to be able to do that. The other thing I was thinking about when you were talking about this is making sure that we don't say yes to everything, because I have a bad habit to do that. We talk about being a recovering people pleaser. And so
be careful what you promise.
Yeah. And so, if it's something that maybe you're not going to have time for in the moment, I'd rather you say, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do that, or no, I can't do that, versus saying yes and then not doing it, to your point. I'm not saying you would say no to somebody that asks for a chart, but I know that I sometimes am like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that gets me in trouble because then I don't fulfill those promises. So,
same thing.
Well, number 7, embrace an attitude of service. This, what jumps out to me here is you're just really focusing on others. Mm-hmm. Again, going to another content piece that you've helped develop with us, which is Ascend to Servant Leadership. And that's really what it's all about. And it's not subservient, right? It's about having the focus on others. Talk just a little bit about just that course and the impact that it's had on you and some of the key points developed out of that. Because I think that's another great day of training for teams that really helps them with servant leadership.
Yeah, people say, I like the idea of servant leadership, but could you call it something else because it seems weak?
Yeah.
And I just tell them it is the hardest thing you've ever done. It is becoming a warrior for your people. Mm-hmm. It is having this, as it says here, an attitude of service that when I look at my team, and matter of fact, influence, we didn't mention this a lot, but influence is 360. It's up, down, and across. So it's not just down to your team. It's across to your peers. It's up to your leader, to your supervisor. So how are you having an attitude of service and putting yourself into a servant leader mindset to really serve the needs? How do I lighten the load of my leader? How do I assist and grow the people next to me? How do I remove barriers and serve the people on my team so that they have success? It really is a 360-degree attitude of service that does that. And it's the hardest thing you've ever done.
Hard.
People say, it seems kind of weak. It's not weak. It's complete struggle.
Yeah. Simple but hard.
Yeah. The last one we'll put on the table was encouraging two-way communication with the people you hope to influence. I love adding this one because the higher you go in leadership, the more it seems to be my voice only. And so I love this idea of share of voice and inviting people to have a point of view, inviting my team to speak. John using phrases like, all of us is smarter than one of us, and we're not going to be successful unless everybody wants me to be. I need to have people speaking in. And am I tapping into, well, first of all, the diversity? We talk about that. Am I being inclusive of this diverse team I've put together so that we have the best chance of getting the best ideas, not just my ideas. I see one way, and I don't need you thinking like me. I need you thinking like you. So inviting that voice into what we do.
I love that. I think that all of these things that we just talked about today, you're probably going, that's not earth-shattering. Well, we know that. I think the real question is kind of bringing those to light and just asking yourself, are we doing them? Are we living this out? And I think Perry and I shared as we went through a couple of these that, man, it's even hard for us to do that at times, and we let things go. And so just bringing them to kind of the forefront of your mind again, saying, hey, this is how you grow your influence. If you're intentional about these things, that it will happen. The key word there is intentional, because we've talked about our calendars and we've talked about our to-dos and all those things, and teaching classes, and yes, making promises and then not delivering. But man, how are we intentional about that? What is the system and the process that we've set up as leaders to be able to increase and grow our influence through doing that.
And I did that little exercise you just suggested. Take those 8, look at them, be honest with yourself. And I already mentioned fulfill promises. I had to do a realignment on, am I keeping the small promises I'm making? Of course, the big ones too, but especially I struggle with the small ones. I wrote down demonstrating my support for others. Sometimes I get a little bit too into myself and into what I'm doing, into what my to-do list is. I'm not looking around about how I can help the team, and that led to embracing an attitude of service. Am I actually actively, intentionally looking for ways to serve my leader, my peers, and my team to do that? So it's a great little exercise. Got to be honest. It could be a little hurtful, but you can grow from it.
Yeah, great self-awareness to go through these and ask yourself those questions. Well, as we wrap up,
You know, people ask me sometimes, John, what gives you your greatest joy? And they immediately think of leading, and they'll say, does leadership give you your greatest joy? I say, no, not really. Well, how about writing? Does that give you your greatest joy? Well, love writing, but it's not number one. Well, kind of speaking. Maybe it's speaking. Does that give you your greatest joy? Love to speak. Love doing what I'm doing right now. Coming into your life, right into your home. Love it. No. You see, what gives me my greatest joy? What's number one in my life is very simple. It's sharing my faith. It's sharing with people just like you how to know God. That gives me far and away my greatest joy. Oh, by the way, if you ask God what gives him his greatest joy, he would say, you coming to know him in a personal way, and then taking that relationship that you've developed with him and sharing it with others. It's God's greatest joy, which is much more important than mine. But the reason I'm so excited about sharing this teaching to you today is because once you learn how to successfully share your faith, I promise you this, it will become your greatest joy. I know it. I have a wonderful friend, George Barna, who does a lot of research, and he recently shared the fact that 9 out of 10 Christ followers, people who really follow God, when they share their faith, 9 out of 10 of them feel like a failure. They feel like they didn't succeed in doing it. And when I read that, I thought, I'm going to just teach a very simple lesson about how you can successfully share your faith with others, and if you don't have faith in God today, how you can know him. So let's get started. This is really what I call an essential. And by the way, I'm so excited at Christ Fellowship for the month of June. The series is on essentials, and Pastor Tom, Pastor Todd, others are going to be sharing the essentials, things that you and I need to have in our life. But let me tell you something, what I'm sharing with you now is the most essential of all. I promise you, it's essential to God because it changes people's lives in an incredibly beautiful way. So let me just show you biblically what I mean. You see, Jesus at the very beginning of his ministry, here's what he said. He's teaching the great Sermon on the Mount. Let me tell you why you are here. You're here to be salt seasoning that brings out God flavors on this earth. If you lose your saltiness, how will people taste godliness? You've lost your saltiness, your usefulness, and you'll end up in a garbage. Here's another way to put it. You're here to be light, bringing out the God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. And if I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. Now that I put you there on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven. At the beginning of his ministry, Jesus basically said this: be attractive, show your faith. Salt makes things better, light makes things brighter. Be attractive, be an example, visualize your faith for others. At the end of our Lord's ministry, he comes back to the same theme of our faith. He's now in his last moments with his disciples, and here's what he says. Jesus, undeterred, went right ahead and gave his charge. God authorized and commanded me to commission you, us, you and me. Now, what does he commission us to do? Go out and train everyone you meet, far and near, in this way of life, this Christian way of life, marking them by baptism in the threefold name, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Then instruct them in the practice of all that I've commanded you. And here's a great promise. He said, I'll be with you as you do this day after day, right up until the end of the age. The account that Mark gives, I'm just going to bring this in real quickly. Jesus said, go into the world, go everywhere, and announce the message of God's good news to one and to all. Whoever believes and is baptized is saved, and whoever refuses to believe is damned. Now, when I'm speaking to a large crowd, I wiggle this and my water falls over. When I'm speaking to two people, I wiggle this, the water falls over. There are some things that just never change, even if COVID-19 is here with us, okay? So I'm going to pick up my water and I'm going to keep teaching, because in the end of Jesus' ministry, what's powerful is this. At the beginning, he said, show your faith, be salt and light, be an example. Here he says, I want you to be active. I want you to share your faith. He said, I want you to show it in your life, but I want you to share it in your words. What did he say? He said, go and train. Who? Everyone you meet. Go everywhere and announce the message of God's good news to one and to all. So what is God's desire for you and me? It's very simple. For us to show our faith and for us to share our faith. So here I'm going to share with you how to do this. And by the word, I'm going to use the word intentionally with all 5 of my statements, because you and I have to do this intentionally. This doesn't happen automatically. This doesn't happen by accident. You and I have to purpose in our heart to be salt and light, to show and share our faith. Number 1, intentionally value people and love them unconditionally. And by the way, you tell that a person values people by the fact they love them unconditionally. The moment I put conditions on my love, now I'm putting conditions on my value of who you are. And if I want to be like Jesus, as you go through the Gospels, you find that he continually valued people. In fact, they came to him one day and they asked him this question. A religion scholar asked him this. Teacher, which command in God's law is the most important? And Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all of your passion, your prayer, your intelligence. This is the most important and the first on any list. But there's a second one that you set alongside of it. Love others as well as you love yourselves. These 2 commands are pegs, everything in God's law, and the prophets hang from them. I have a wonderful friend, Tom Arrington. And one day he gave me one of my favorite gifts of all. When I wear French cuffs, I love the cufflinks. And he gave me a wonderful set of cufflinks, silver, and on one it says love God, and the other it says love people. And I looked at him and I thanked him for that incredible gift. And when I wear it, it reminds me again that this is what Jesus says. Jesus says basically value people. Love God, love people. And you can't separate them. If you love God, you really truly will love people. Sometimes if you don't know God, I think it's hard to maybe love them. But the point being, love God, love people. God so loved the world. He so loved you, he so loved me, that he gave his only son to come into this world. That's how much he loves us. So intentionally value people. Number 2, intentionally enter their world. Jesus said, I want you to go to everyone and I want you to go everywhere. This is the most important part of the message, so I don't want you to miss it. You are the connecting link between others and God. You are the connecting link. Don't miss this. In the Gospels, for example, there were 40 times that Jesus came to people and touched them and their lives were changed. There are 40 times in the Gospels. And now here's what I want you not to miss. 34% of the time, 34 times, which is 85% of the time, okay? 34 out of 40 times, either the people brought Jesus to the person that needed him, or they brought the person that needed Jesus to Jesus. In other words, 85% of the time in the Gospels, when Jesus interacted and changed a life, it was because someone was the connecting link between that person who needed God and God himself. This is amazing. When you look into Luke chapter 15, it's known as the chapter that talks about the lost coin, the lost sheep, and the lost son. When you look into this chapter, the lost coin, the coin was lost, but it didn't even know it. This represents by far the most people. They don't even know they're supposed to have a relationship with God. They're lost, but they don't know it. Now, the sheep was lost and knew it, but didn't know how to find the shepherd. This is the second class of people. When you go out and enter their world, you'll find that there are people who are lost. They don't even know they're lost. There are people who are lost. They know they're lost, but they don't know what to do about the fact that they're lost. And then there was the son, the prodigal son, who was lost, but he knew what to do. He knew that he needed to get back to his father's house. You see, when you and I enter into their world, we make a discovery, and the discovery is that most people are like the coin and they're like the sheep. In other words, they need me to connect them to Jesus. They need you to connect them to Jesus. In fact, in 1 Corinthians 9, Paul said, I entered their world and tried to experience things from their point of view. Paul said, it was so important for me to show people that I valued them, that I entered their world and I listened to them. I spent time with them because I wanted to see their perspective. I wanted to see where they were about God and why they didn't have a relationship with God. And I wanted to know them better so that I could serve them better, add value to them better, and share my faith better with them. The proverb writer said that if you win people to Christ, you become wise. And when I started sharing my faith, I didn't understand that. I kind of thought if you were wise, you shared your faith, but it doesn't say that. It says if you share your faith, you're wise. And what I discovered is when I entered their world and I began to know them, they would ask me questions. Sometimes I wouldn't know faith questions to give them a good answer, so I'd say, hey, let me go figure this out. And I'd go look in the Word of God or ask other Christians, and I'd come back with a good answer for them. After doing that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, all of a sudden I had an answer for anyone. And people say, John, you're so wise. No, I'm not so wise. I just had a lot of practice. And remember this, you and I were never good the first time. In fact, when Barna says that sometimes when people share their faith, they feel like a failure, I think what happens is the first time they share their faith, it doesn't go what they thought it would go. And so they kind of back away and say, wow, maybe that's not my gift. Maybe I can't do that. Not true, not true, not true. He that wins souls is wise. As you begin to interact and enter their world, you'll understand them. And the more that you understand them, the better you'll answer them. By the way, you can't answer people that you don't know well. Doesn't happen. And once they know your heart, they're much more ready to accept your answers. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Enter their world. Number 3, intentionally add value to them. Now notice the sequence, and the sequence is very simple. I value people, so therefore I add value to them. If I don't value people, if I don't value you, I won't come and add value to you. People don't add value to people they don't value. So it starts with I value you, which I do. Right now as you're watching online, let me just say something to you. You're God's creation. You were literally born to know Him and to live a good life. And you're so valuable to Him that He literally sent His Son Jesus into the world so that you could be forgiven and become a child of God. And if God values you, then I value you unconditionally. No matter who you are, where you are, what you've done, doesn't matter. Love you, love you, love you. Value you. But when I value you, then I will add value to you. But here's the key to successfully sharing your faith. You don't first share your faith. you first add value to people. And when you begin to care for people and add value to people where they are, what they're doing right now, entering their world, not your world, not what I want, what you want, not what I need, what you need. The moment that I begin to add value to you right where you are, then all of a sudden, we begin to connect relationally. You begin to trust me. I trust you. When we get together, the walls come down, and all of a sudden, we really have a genuine love and care for one another. And it's at that moment of adding value to you that sometimes I get the opportunity to share faith. Here's what I do believe, truly believe. I remember in a conversation I had in the last years of Billy Graham, and we were talking about leadership and we were talking about evangelism, my two probably favorite things. He said, John, don't let anything that you do or say shut the door and keep people from knowing God. And I really follow that. Don't let anything shut the door and keep people from knowing God. In fact, I turned it around and I basically turned it around and said, do everything that will open the door to the gospel. Everything I do, I ask myself, does this open the door to the good news? So intentionally add value to people. Number 4, intentionally make them hungry to know God. I love this section. I honestly, I wish I had 30 minutes. I could just talk to you about making people hungry to know God, because I know that because people are created to know God, that their appetite begins to increase when they get around somebody that begins to show them who God is. It's a natural sequence. Okay, what does salt do? Salt makes things and people thirsty. So if we're salt around people, we make people thirsty. And what do we make them thirsty to do? We make them thirsty to find a better life. They see us and they say, wow, she's got a better life than I do. He's got a better life than I do. And it makes them hungry to know God. When we think of being light, what does light do? Light makes people aware. All of a sudden lights come on and they see their surroundings. And what did they become aware of? They become aware of the fact that there's a better life to be lived. Why? Because they saw it in you. They saw it because you're salt and you're light. The Holy Spirit produces a very appetizing life for us. He sets us up to make people hungry, because when you look at the fruit of the Spirit in our lives, I mean, think of this for a moment. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Whenever I read the fruit of the Spirit, I say, well, that person's very attractive. I mean, I would like to have love in my life, wouldn't you? I would love to have joy in my life. I mean, joy regardless of COVID-19 and the circumstances that I'm in and the things that are not new and normal to me anymore and all the adjustments. I would love to have joy. I mean, every one of us would like to meet a person that had the fruit of the Spirit in their life. Of course we would. Now, this is very exciting to me, because during the most difficult times that people have to go through, that's when they get the most hungry to know God. And I'm here to tell you, for Christ Fellowship Church and churches all over America and around the world, this is harvest time. This is harvest time because we've had to make adjustments. I mean, hey, I've got 2 people in the auditorium, 2 of the pastors, the lead pastor, and then I've got you, but I've got you and you're in your home. I'm talking to you right where you are. You see, the church has had to, quote, leave the building. This is good. This is healthy, because now this gets me to where you are. This now causes me to think, since I can't, quote, bring you to church, how can I bring Christ to you? And that's the key. The key is, how do I introduce you to your faith? And so let me just share with you, during this crisis time, I've had many opportunities where people will say, wow, you know, things are uncertain, and I just, wow, I don't know what's going to come next, and I don't, and there's a lot of uncertainty, and with uncertainty is stress and anxiety, and there are times when I'll look at them and we're having a conversation, I'll say, you know what? I wish you had my peace right now. They'll say, what do you mean? Well, what I mean is I just wish you had my peace. Well, I don't understand that. Well, you see, I'm a person of faith. And so during a very difficult time like COVID-19, people that are so worried about the outward situations, I have a peace that God gives me. In fact, he said, let me tell you something, John. The world can't give you this peace. And let me tell you something else. The world can't take it away. In other words, he said, COVID-19 can't take away your peace. And to be honest with you, as I'm talking to you right now, I wish I could come right into your home. I wish I could sit in the chair beside you. I wish I could share with you the fact that you can have a relationship with God. Trust me on this. There went the water again. We're going to let the water lay. It's obvious I can't keep water on the table. Trust me on this. God has a peace for you that this world can't rob you and take it away. I tell people all the time, I wish you had my strength right now. Now, I have uncertainty. I have questions. It's not that I'm above this, but let me tell you something. Although I'm surrounded with all the stuff you're surrounded with, I have a secret weapon. I have Christ in me, the hope of all of my life. He's within me. And so at times like this, I'm not swayed by all the stuff that's happening because he lives within me. Oh, I'll tell you, maybe you're listening to this and you're saying, oh, okay, Maxwell, that makes me hungry. I hope it does. Because let me tell you something, there's a better life for you than you have right now if you don't know God. There's a better life for you. My name is John. I'm your friend. Trust me, there's a better life for you. Number five, I intentionally believe that everyone wants to know God. I believe that. I believe you want to know God. When I look at a person, the first thought I have is they want to know God. And if that's true, my question is, why don't they know God? And it's very obvious. Let's go back to that Luke 15 passage where I talked about the coin, the sheep, and the son. You see, I believe a lot of people want to know God. They just don't know that they're even lost. That's why they need you. They need you to be salt and light, show faith. They need you to share with your words, share faith. That's why they need you, because the moment they see you and hear you, all of a sudden they say, oh, this is what I've been missing. This is what I've been looking for. You got the sheep. Well, they know they're lost, but they don't know how to find God. That's why they need you. You're the one that'll help that lost sheep back to the Father. And by the way, the son, let me tell you something about the son. He knew to go back to his father's house, but let me tell you something. He didn't know the father unconditionally loved him. And here's why I know that to be true. If he had known the father was unconditional in his love, he'd have gone home sooner. He spent weeks, maybe months, I don't know, maybe a year or two, doing things he didn't want to do, living life that he didn't want to live. And the reason he stayed away from his father's house was because he knew his father would accept him as a servant, but he wasn't sure that his father would accept him as a son. And you know, the father said, I'm so glad you're here. Let's have a party. What's lost has been found. If someone had told this son that your father goes out every day waiting for you and looking for you, that son would have come home even sooner. And I share with you right now, my friend, even if you know the way back to God, the only reason you've hesitated is because you're not sure that God unconditionally loves you. Now listen to me very carefully. He does. He loves you unconditionally. No matter where you've been, no matter what you've done, his arms are wide open for you. And so, you may be like the coin, lost until maybe at this moment you didn't realize that this missing piece within you, this discontent deep down inside, is just God saying, you need a relationship with me. I would like to close our time together, and it's been so good to be with you. I'd like to close our time together, if you'll allow me now, just to pray for you. And if you would like to know God, this is very simple. You just, wherever you are right now, you just repeat these simple words after me, and you can begin to have this relationship with God today, in your home, right where you are. Let's pray. Father, I thank you that I've had a few moments to kind of understand how I can know you, that you love me unconditionally, and that you're always waiting for me to come home. Yes, home, because I was created to know you. I was created to be with you. I was created to live with you. And so I repeat this prayer right now with John. Father, I know you love me unconditionally, and I want to come home. I confess my sins to you. I'm sorry. I want a new life, and I want that life today. I want to start now my relationship with you. And so I open my heart, and I ask you to come into my life as my Savior, as my friend. Amen. That was the most important decision you've ever made, and that's what makes God happy.
Our word today is powerful, and that's not a descriptor, that's the actual word, powerful. Recently, my wife Wendy and I took our family to Washington, D.C., arguably the most powerful city in the world. And we did all the tourist things that you're supposed to do. We got a tour of the U.S. Capitol. And I remember turning to my family and going, can't you just feel the power here? Because you've got political parties vying for power. You have politicians and leaders vying for power, all grabbing for power. And ironically, they're doing that in a city named for someone who gave up his power, George Washington. You probably know the story that George Washington decided, as you well know, he decided not to become king, and he relinquished his power. And when word got to King George III, the King of England, when he heard that George Washington was going to release his power, he was rumored to have said this: if George Washington actually does this, he'll be the greatest man in the world. What a statement that is. And what he was talking about, I think what he was describing, is that it's really counterintuitive for someone who has so much power to relinquish it. But what George Washington was showing is that he was actually so powerful as an individual leader that he wasn't willing to allow power to corrupt his character and his heart and his soul, because he knew at some point in every leader's story, you have to relinquish power and not hold on to it, not hoard it for yourself. That's what great leaders do. They leverage their power for the sake of others, and at some point they release it and relinquish it. And when a leader does that, that's powerful. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Jeff, I'm not George Washington. I'm not going to lead something that big. I'm certainly not going to lead something that big either. But you have a role of power in your variety of roles in your life. In fact, let me close with giving you one. That maybe you've never thought of this as a powerful role, but you, in probably some level today, you are going to exhibit power as a customer. You're going to go into a restaurant, maybe a coffee shop, you're going to do business with someone, and you are the customer, and you have power. In that moment, you have an opportunity to release and leverage your power. Yes, the business wants to serve you well, but what if you serve the business by beginning the conversation with the person who comes up to your table, takes your coffee order, whatever it may be? What if you pause and say, hey, thank you for being here. Thank you for working here. Thank you for serving me. Do you know what you do in that moment? You take your power as a customer and you leverage it for their good to encourage them. And when you do that, you become a powerful voice in that person's life. Because what you're doing is you're encouraging them. And encouragement is never small when you're on the receiving end of it. So whatever role that you might have as a leader today, look for ways to relinquish and release and leverage your power, not for your sake, but for the sake of those around you.
I'm sitting here today with Tracy, and Tracy, I thought about a quote from Patrick Emmington. He said, "It's the greatest folly to talk of motivating anybody. The real key is to help others unlock and direct their deepest motivators." And as I'm listening to John today, I thought, how true is it that if you'll just listen to this as that student we talk about, man, there's really some good stuff here on how to motivate yourself and then motivate those around us.
And I agree. And what I think is so cute, let's bookend it. I'll start at the end and come back to the beginning. When John says go from hype to habit.
Yes.
I thought it was so cute, the story that he started out talking about himself as a fourth grader, and how amazing that when he saw the big boys, as he called them, out on the court. I would think that most kids, now I've had 6 kids, and I would say that most kids, including myself, would see the people out on the court and would practice being called out onto the court by the microphone and to the crowd cheering. And what he saw, even as a fourth grader, was that he needed to, that was the hype. The being interviewed or called out onto the court. It's not interviewed. What is it? Being introduced out onto the court. And what he saw was that he didn't need to practice being introduced onto the court. Even as a young boy, he saw that it wasn't about the hype he needed to practice. He needed to practice basketball so that he could be one of those 5 introduced out onto the court. I thought that was amazing that even as a child, he wasn't drawn to the hype, even though his heart was. He was drawn to the habit that would get him to that position where he would be introduced. I thought that's amazing.
Yeah, that whole comment and then how your play on that reminds me of a great story of Serena Williams, the great tennis star. And she would, right before championship games, she would start thinking about the post-game interview and what she was going to say. She would start envisioning what she would do right after the last shot when she won the championship. Isn't it interesting? And John's thinking about walking out on that stage, and he dribbled out there and then came back, did it 3 times. The coach said, "Are you going to practice?" And so, but these great, it's almost like, don't focus on the pomp and the hype as you're talking about. Focus on the talent, but then focus on how you're going to make the best once you are really talented. And I love that. And I think that both of those stories just really motivate me, how John did that, and then how Serena would spend time thinking about what is going to be her post-championship interview and how's it going to sound, even before she's played in the championship. So I love that. And that's kind of, I think that's applicable to how we as leaders need to be. We need to focus on the disciplines, the habits, and not so much on the hype.
That's right. And preparing to succeed.
Yeah.
And so I would love to know, I'm sure our listeners would too, do you remember the first time you were motivated?
Yeah. I was real motivated, and it goes to John's first point, the leader who motivates is self-motivated. I can remember, Tracy, 4 and 5 years old, leading, all of 2022, I've been telling a story in all of our big events about how I wanted to drive a ship as a 5-year-old, and I would pretend my entire carport was this ship and all these people, and we were taking a cargo that was precious to faraway places, to people who did not experience the magnitude of the precious cargo that I have. Don't ask me what the cargo was. I can't remember. I just know it was very precious. It was very needed, and it was going to impact people when
Maybe
I got
it was
there.
little Hot Wheels or something back.
Yeah, it might have been. It could have even been one of those little red hot things, fireballs. It could have been fireballs.
Candy.
I don't know. Yeah, candy. But all I know is I would sit on that imaginary ship and I would motivate my people saying, "Hey, I know we've been on the waters for 3 weeks now, but imagine the face of the people." I can remember at 5, 6 years old, motivating my imaginary crew with what it was going to be like to deliver our cargo. So I can remember feeling motivated at a very, very young age. I can remember motivating people, even imaginary people. I probably motivated imaginary people a little bit better than real people.
It's easier.
It is easier, less resistance for sure. But I can remember early in life being motivated, and a lot of that came from within. I just had this passion within me that burned and exhibited itself as motivation. And I can remember after about 2 years of driving this big cargo ship, which was our carport.
This is imaginary, or
this
is
all
real?
imaginary.
Oh, okay.
Driving our carport, which was my cargo ship. And one day I'm standing on the railing looking out over a 20-foot drop, and all of a sudden a plane landing at Atlanta airport flew over, and I went, why would I drive a cargo ship when I could drive an airplane, an airship, and get there much faster and take a lot more people? So it quit being such a precious cargo to now getting people farther than they'd ever been faster. Until about 9, and then the United States had the space shuttle program. And my cargo ship turned to an airship, an airplane, to a spaceship. And I soared into the world and took people to destinations they had never been.
I love that.
And so anyway, it's funny because I could tell more of the story, but today I'm not driving a cargo ship, an airship, or a spaceship, but I'm driving a leadership.
Yeah.
How about that?
I love that so much. Oh my gosh, why we love you times a million. I love that. Okay, so getting back to, so you're self-motivated. That's the goal. John talks about the leader who motivates is self-motivated, but then he talked about something that we should motivate someone with the right motives.
Yeah.
And so can you do a little bit of motivating right here to our audience? If someone is listening, he gave 2 examples that manipulation is moving people forward for personal advantage. And I would say that that's a temptation for every leader, because every leader is trying to get ahead, has personal goals and has their eye on certain goals. But then he says motivation is moving people forward for mutual advantage. So let's say someone is in our audience, and I'm certain that this has to be, if we're getting real with ourselves, as leaders should be. And they might have heard John say that, and there was that little bit of, in their spirit of, like, it is kind of one-sided. Maybe I am guilty of manipulating my people, not with bad intentions even maybe, but can you talk a little bit to our audience if they have found themselves that it's one-sided maybe, and how do they move that needle from it being just about personal advantage, of how do you become a leader who makes it a win-win situation?
Yeah, I think all of us that are leading things bigger than us, things that are more significant us, we have manipulated people. So I want to start there because it sounds so bad. But I want to tell you this, if you're asking the question, how can I not manipulate people? How can I make sure that I'm motivating people? You don't have a manipulation problem, you have a passion problem, and you don't have people around you that can speak into your blind spots. Because all of us that are leading will at times get so focused on our agenda, on our mission, on the thing that is so important to us, that without even knowing it, without being intentional about it, we will begin to manipulate people to get to the accomplishment of our vision and mission. So start there. There's a chance, those of you that are leading big things, leading teams, there's a chance that you might be manipulating right now. I'm not challenged with the fact that people manipulate. I'm challenged with the people that manipulate ongoing, consistent, and don't have checks and balances in their life. So I don't want to manipulate people. I hope I never do, but I do. Because the agenda sometimes becomes so important that I got to get there that I don't slow down and motivate. Now let me explain motivation. When John says motivation is moving people for mutual advantage, the only way I can know what mutual advantage is with questions. Right. Now, John goes right after that, motivational questions in his lesson, but stop right here. Manipulation, we all have a strong temptation to manipulate people at certain times when we got to get to the goal. We've got to get to the summit. But the way that you motivate people is you have to ask questions. You have to sit down and ask, what is motivating to you?
Right.
And let me tell you how you know you are being tempted to motivate or to manipulate rather than motivate. When you're doing a lot more talking rather than asking questions. How does that make you feel, Tracy, that we're going to go chase this agenda, that we're going to go get 100,000 people in the growth app? How does that make you feel? Oh, it feels good. It feels good. Sometimes I got to slow down and say, why does it make you feel good, Tracy? Well, I know that answer for you, I think. Let me try it for a moment. You are so passionate about women that are great moms and great leaders and have a passion for the world to embrace both expressions. You're passionate about it. And you want people that are passionate about family and people that have enough significance to be passionate about the family that they are significant in other areas too. So when I feel like I am over motivating you for my agenda, I slow down and say, Tracy, you do remember that on the personal growth app, you're going to be able to talk to more people about making relationships important in their life. And all of a sudden, I watch those lights turn back on in your eyes.
Right.
I watch you lean forward again and say, this is what I want my life to be about. Too many leaders that are casting too much vision, they cross the line between motivating people to mutual passions, mutual accomplishments, to manipulating people to their passion and their accomplishments. And so for me, as a leader that is very passionate, we just talked about that with my 5-year-old self, I've got to slow down and ask questions to make sure that people are getting motivated at their passion and desire level, not my passion and desire level.
It really is coming back to the relationship.
It is.
Which I love to always connect back to. It's knowing your people. It's you know that about me. You're able to say those things because you know that about me, and you also can know that I can lose motivation as somebody who you are leading into a new place because I can get distracted by other things in life, and it's connecting back of where we're going to the heart of what really matters to me and what matters to the people. And I know somebody needs to hear that because you can start to feel, and maybe you feel this way sometimes, that the people that you're leading and trying to motivate get distracted easily. And so it's a matter of connecting back because life is busy, life has hardships, life can distract our people. And when we're trying to motivate them, we need to make sure that we are connecting to the things that through those questions that really matter to them. Well,
so recently sitting in the studio today is Jared Cagle. He's recently been named our Executive Vice President of Content Development.
Yay!
And so he texted me earlier this week at the podcast recording, and he said, Mark, I'm living my best life. He said, I just experienced a day that I could have only dreamt would have happened in my life. It was a perfect day. It had all these components. In fact, he was telling us a little bit about some of the components before we started recording. Here's my point. When you are motivating people and you're getting their best, an agenda of the leader can be accomplished, but it is much more gratifying as a leader to know that it's being accomplished on, in this case, Jared's terms rather than my terms. And I've left too many meetings, Tracy, and John Maxwell would say, hey, how was the meeting? I go, man, it was great. How do you know it was great? Because I really delivered my message. And he went, that's what made the meeting great? You got the message off your chest? A great meeting is when I deliver a message that awakens something in the person listening to the message and inspires them to go chase fulfillment of significance and success in their life because it's something they want to do. A great meeting is not always everybody rallying around my vision and my direction, but a great meeting is always when I can rally people around what's in them and what they want to accomplish with their life.
And that leads right into creating a motivational environment, a motivational meeting environment. But how do you gauge that? Like for that meeting when John would say to you, well, how great was your meeting, Mark? Or how was your meeting, Mark? How do you gauge if they were sparked, if the people sitting in your meeting were sparked, if they were motivated by what you were saying and connecting with that? How do you gauge that?
Well, it's a good question. I love this question. In fact, I'm thinking of a meeting that's coming up pretty soon to where I really have got to motivate our team for the vision that I have for the rest of 2022 and getting us ready for 2023. I'm starting to feel the intensity now. It's middle of October. I'm starting to feel the intensity of 2023 plans. And I've really got to motivate our team. What I've asked them to do, I just shot a video this morning before I came into this to record with you. I asked them to consider, I gave them an example of what success looked like from an event that we did with the vision we had for the event and for the organization. I said, here is the model of perfect scenario. Give them a picture of what success looks like. Then I asked them and I said, I want you to come ready to this next meeting with clarity on how you can learn from this picture perfect example that I've just given you and apply that to some areas that you are already connected with the vision, or areas in your organization that you're part of the organization that you need to connect to the vision. Find what's going well, or find something that we really need to work on. I think oftentimes we ask people, why aren't you motivated? But we don't give them a picture of what motivation or inspiration looks like. I think you've got to give a good model, a good example, and then ask them the question, what will motivate and inspire you to get to that good example in your world? And I'm trying that now, Tracy. Maybe we'll come back in a podcast next month or in a couple of weeks, and I'll tell you how it's going. But that's what I'm trying to do currently, is create this motivational environment by saying, hey, this is what's working perfect to the vision with great culture and great momentum. This is what I would like for your part of the organization. How can you get there? What would it look like in your mind to get there?
Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results.